Hello, my fellow schizotypals. Did you hear that noise? What up, doe? Welcome back to Highlight with Carlisle Fletcher. I'm your host, Carlisle Fletcher, and thank you so much for tuning in to the show. Today, we're going to be talking about cannabis and psychosis, again, popular topic on the show, and discussing controlling for first experiences and the age of onset of psychotic symptoms, controlling that with cannabis use, tobacco use, cocaine use, and seeing how those things correlate to that. Then getting into cannabis as a pharmaceutical and treatment option for other various things, including inflammation from cocaine abuse disorder. After that, we're going to maybe get into a little bit of infrastructure, but also why Amazon should be a state-owned business. And then we'll be ending off the show with Awake But Still in Bed and their music. So, let's get into the show, right? Oh, so Spear's doing good. Cool. Let's break in. Cannabis and tobacco co-use was found to be associated with a change in age of first psychotic episode, but not tobacco use or cannabis use or co-use when controlled for covariate cocaine use. To me, this points to substance abuse as the relevant topic because we have psychotic people, right? And psychotic people are more likely to smoke cigarettes, they're more likely to smoke cannabis, they're more likely to drink, they're more likely to be arrested, they're more likely to do a lot of things because you have a at-risk population. So to say that it's like, well, this population is more likely to smoke weed, well, it's like, well, yes, they're more likely to do a lot of things, I would say substance abuse in general. So when you see somebody abusing substances, it's like, well, yeah, we should be, paying attention to this because this could go very badly. Also, does this look good? I think this is generally how I fucking wear this outfit. I don't fucking know. Who cares? But let's compare lifetime cannabis use amongst people who've had a first episode of psychosis versus control. 55.3% of those with a psychotic episode versus 29.4% of the controls used cannabis. So that's 1.8 times higher, roughly 2% higher among psychotics. And then with cocaine use, you have 21.5 versus 7.4, which is around 3 times higher than those with than those who have not had psychotic experiences. So, inconsistent results have also been published regarding the symptomology of smokers with psychosis. However, while there is a good deal of data on the effects of tobacco on symptom severity and functional outcome in patients with an established diagnosis of schizophrenia or the non-affective psychosis spectrum, studies on individuals with FEP are much scarcer. Some suggest that smokers with FEP presented greater severity of both positive and negative symptoms and worse cognition and quality of life. Others did not find this relationship or found the opposite result. Bearing in mind the above, there are many questions related to the relationship between tobacco and psychosis still open to debate. Besides the hypothesis of considering tobacco per se as a risk factor for psychosis, its impact on the phenotypic expression of the disorder, and consequently, the possibility of inducing a differentiated entity in terms of etiology, clinical features, prognosis, response to conventional treatment, and/or preventative intervention remains unknown. To our knowledge, there are very few studies about the effects of tobacco on patients presenting with a first psychotic experience compared with those who did not use tobacco or use cannabis concomitantly. Therefore, the main objective of the present study is to describe the clinical profile of the earliest symptoms of psychotic illness in individuals FEP based on previous tobacco use with or without cannabis use. Other secondary objectives of the study are to analyze if there is a differential effect of tobacco on the age of onset of psychosis, understood as the first psychotic experience in FEP, as well as to describe the pattern of tobacco and cannabis use in individuals with FEP compared with healthy controls. Regarding substance use, FEP patients had significantly higher prevalence of tobacco, cannabis, and cocaine use than healthy controls. But at the time of assessment and throughout their life, both at the time of assessment and throughout their life. These differences were especially notable in the case of cannabis and cocaine. Among tobacco and cannabis smokers, there was also a greater intensity in the FEP group. However, there was no difference between the two groups at first use of the three substances, nor in years of regular use of cannabis and tobacco. So here we just have some numbers which are interesting. And this is where I was getting that, where it's like, so you take the cannabis users, you have lifetime users, and then you have control. So psychotics, 55.3, control 29.4, and 21.5 7.4. I mean, you can compare these as well if you'd like, which would be, so like this is like roughly 5, so it's like roughly 3. This is roughly 2.2, just off top doing that math. But, you know, so it's like there is a distinction where it's like cocaine is more correlated with it. And that to me shows that it's like, you know, you start with, everybody has smoked a cigarette in their life. So you start with that. And then it's like you start drinking, you start smoking, and then it's kind of like, you know, it's another step forward. And then like you start doing cocaine, and then, you know, you start taking Xanax recreationally, and then you start doing heroin, you know, and that's like another step forward. And this isn't any of those substances. This is something very different. This is the spiral into substance abuse, which to me is way more indicative of a spiritual or a mental crisis, where you have an individual that does not feel connected to their life. They do not feel like they have meaning or community in most cases. They feel like a left out member of society. So that's what I would say is actually the culprit there, rather than it's like, well, they had an alcoholic beverage once a week when they were, blah, blah, blah. You know, it's like, well, I think that you have to look at where the system is against people, because you have to look at why people are failing even though they don't know. You know, because like that's where it's like, the biggest thing that I'm trying to inform people of is the things that they aren't aware that they're being sabotaged by just every day. So the only difference here that we can analyze is between cannabis and tobacco users and tobacco users. There's no difference between controls and cannabis users really, which is just interesting. So this is your tobacco and cannabis, and this is your tobacco. Like here, there's a difference, but when you have your no tobacco, no cannabis, and you have your cannabis use only, these are incredibly similar. But meanwhile, tobacco use and cannabis use, you have this wide range, which to me shows that tobacco use itself is a more moderate thing where everybody smokes. You know, it's like a lot of people have experimented with it in their lives. Tobacco and cannabis use is, you know, you're starting to do more and more. And it's not about either substance. It's about the fact that you're starting to engage in polysubstance use. And I'd say that is very important. So that's just a further, you know, this is about the symptoms. And I think it's an interesting data set, but it's not made clear to me that smoking is the culprit here. So Table 3 shows the prevalence of each symptom based on substance use groups. There's no statistically significant differences between A and C. So that's none and co-use. Also, no statistically significant differences were detected between cannabis use only and any of the other 3 groups. However, differences were detected between Group B, tobacco only, and Group A and Group C. Thus, compared to individuals with no substance use, tobacco-only users presented sleep disturbances much more frequently, and negative symptoms, specifically social withdrawal, less frequently. On the other hand, patients with use of both substances more frequently presented ideas of reference, perceptual abnormalities, hallucinations, and disorganized thinking when compared with those who used tobacco only. And I think that that is an important thing to discuss in the conversation, is that cannabis is psychoactive. And my advocacy for it is not trying to give people a way out. There's not really a way out. You know, your issues are going to be your issues. You can't really escape any of that. So, the reason why I bring that up is that I think that cannabis is most useful when you're promoting psychoactive activity. You know, so if you have somebody with like PTSD who's entirely numb to the world around them, cannabis might help them defreeze a little bit. However, if you have somebody who has PTSD and every single noise that they hear they think is a gunshot, you might not want to get that person high. You know, so it is a case-by-case thing. And hallucinations are a serious thing for a lot of people. And I would say, like, cannabis is really for grounded people. If you're somebody who is sort of, I don't like using the word psychotic or things like that, but it's somebody who's more spacey, somebody who's more, you know, sensitive to that realm of ideas, then yeah, it might be very difficult for you to partake in that. Like, I know a lot of artists who are, you know, incredible imaginations, and that's why they don't really seem, you know, drawn towards these psychedelic substances, or entheogens, whatever you want to call them, is because of that, you know, they don't really want to, like, you know, just keep pushing things. But, so dysmorphic mood, we got 24, 30, 22, 38. Okay. Interesting. only the use of both was the person who had, or the people who had the lowest dysmorphia. Sleep disturbances, yeah. That actually, yes, sleep disturbances are way worse with tobacco use. That's what that looks like. Ideas of reference. Okay. Wait, what? Controls are more suspicious? What? People who don't use either? Or not really, those aren't healthy controls, but there's psychotic people who use neither, I believe. Yeah, they're more suspicious than the people who smoke weed. Because the people who smoke weed are like, I think I'm paranoid or something. Oh wait, these are numbers. So these aren't the percentages. I am... No, these are percentages. Oh my fucking god. Perceptual or abnormalities, 56, 46, 67, 69. Okay, yes, perceptual abnormality. But again, like, you know, it is like the kind of like that loosening of the framework. I do think that there is a lot of... Because, I mean, like, listen, like, I've been studying Russian literature since I was a babby. You know, it's like I raised myself on that stuff. That's pretty unusual ideas, you know, and I'd say that is even, like, if you wanted to, that could be... Like, it's funny because it's like I've talked... So as somebody who's, like, you know, very... I'm a nerd. I've been studying psychological literature since I was a teenager, and I've been to therapy a lot, and I've talked to my therapist. You know, when you talk about stuff like this with them, they don't really, you know, it's like, it is... We don't really know. We don't really... what you want to do with your brain, what you want to do with your life and your health, we don't really know how to control that. And we don't really know what is right and wrong. So it's like, when I'm... You know, it's like the reason why I would not be considered a schizophrenic, but I would be considered a schizotypal, is that believing that the government and that power itself is inherently evil, so that to want it is to be evil, and that anybody who craves power and anybody who thinks that power is a usable object is evil and out to ruin humanity and themselves, and is a actor of Satan, essentially. And I don't mean Satan literally, the divine being. I mean the idea of human greed and human capriciousness. And that, like, the government is out to get people and make sure that they're caught in cycles of disexercise and poverty and diseducation and things like that. They're actively suppressing communities and against people. These aren't delusional ideas. You know, they might be unusual, and you could count these ideas as symptoms of psychosis. However, they are based in research, and they're based in what I have been able to make sense of in the world. But they are unusual, you know, because I don't just trust Anderson Cooper. I don't just listen to Fox. I don't just, like, feel comfortable within paradigms. I'm actively engaging in deep study of not only history, but current events. You know, and so, like, when you have that, and you also have, like, you know, certain experiences, you end up with somebody who's a little bit beyond the pale. And that's, like, yeah, again, you can count that as a symptom. You can count that as somebody who is prone to psychotic behavior, or it can be a byproduct of education. You know, so it's like, it's very difficult to, again, a decreased expression of emotions. Russians are like, why are you smiling at a funeral home? You know, like, why are you selling me a coffin with a smile? That seems a little sick. You know, so it's like, it depends, like, a lot of this stuff, I would say, depends. Yeah, wow, tobacco users are way better. Wow, social withdrawal. Wow, people who don't use any drugs have really bad social withdrawal. Oh, that's true. Actually, yeah, that's why I started using drugs. Huh. Yeah, disorganized thinking. But again, also, what is disorganized thinking? Because is that not more intuitive? Is that not being more open to inspiration than it is having logical thinking? Like, what has logical thinking really done for you? You know, it's like, do you really need to have the Prussian school model meant to make the obedient citizen for the factory? Do you really need to work within that paradigm to feel like you're fulfilling yourself and like you're, you know, really getting things done? Or could you maybe relax a little bit and just, like, you know, think through things at the speed that you would like? So when they excluded the people who were using cocaine, identical results were obtained for differences in the prevalence of sleep disturbances, negative symptoms, social withdrawal, disorganized thinking, and ideas of reference. However, statistically significant differences disappeared for prevalence of hallucinations and perceptual or abnormalities. Results from the multinomial regression analysis using Group B as a category of reference showed that differences previously detected between Group B and Group A Sleep disturbances and social withdrawal remain significantly significant in the model. On the other hand, the model exploring differences between the group B and C, tobacco and cannabis, retained the variables, disorganized thinking, and ideas of reference, along with cocaine use, male sex, and age at first symptom. So now we're now we're on to the discussion. Regarding the main objective of the study, we observed a differential clinical profile of the earliest symptoms of psychosis in our FEP patients who used tobacco only before developments of symptoms, compared with the no substance use and the cannabis and tobacco use group. In comparison with patients with no tobacco or cannabis use, patients who had used tobacco only presented sleep disturbances more frequently, and negative symptoms, specifically social withdrawal, less frequently. On the other hand, in comparison with both tobacco and cannabis users, tobacco-only users showed a lower prevalence of ideas of reference, perceptual abnormalities, hallucinations, and disorganized thinking. Furthermore, these patients who use tobacco only experience the earliest symptoms at an older age than those who use tobacco and cannabis concomitantly, which to me again shows that people who are actually psychotic are more likely to experiment with these substances regardless of what they are. This difference in age was not found between either of these two groups and the group of patients who did not use tobacco or cannabis. Also, we did not find any difference between the group of cannabis users only and the other three groups, although this can be explained by the small sample size of this group. Another thing for me is having experience with a lot of heroin addicts, all of them try to replace it with alcohol if they quit. Not all of them, that's a little bit flippant. But it's a very common thing that people who are struggling with heroin addiction, once they quit, they're trying to replace that. So then they try to drink, but then it doesn't work because drinking is not the same thing. And to me, that points to like a larger substance abuse issue. And the reason why is I think that clinically that is more important than saying like, oh, this person's a cokehead. It's like, oh, this person will snort any fucking thing you put in front of them. You know, it's a different thing. In this regard, tobacco alone doesn't seem to be related to an earlier age of onset of the first psychotic episode without concomitant use of cannabis, as other studies have already reported. Furthermore, our study suggests that tobacco use does also not influence age of onset of the earliest symptoms of psychosis when compared to those who do not use. Our results confirm that was already been published, that patients use tobacco and cannabis with psychotics use tobacco and cannabis with greater frequency and intensity than the general population of the same age and sex, with no differences in relation to age of onset in this use. So, even though people are using substances at the same time, psychotics are using way more. So it's not like, you know, all of a sudden, like, psychotics are people who, like, smoked weed at 12, and then everybody who smoked weed at 12 is a psychotic. Psychotics start smoking at the same time everybody else starts smoking. They just do it way harder. So, like, to me, that shows that you're having, you know, it's like, it's a drug issue. You have these people who are more prone to have issues controlling themselves, or who need, like, you know, a fix. They're like, their brains are fucked up, so like they're more prone to experiment with these things. So yeah, and this is the final piece of information from this piece of research, is that in the initial phase of the illness, almost all of our patients had at least one general prodromal symptoms of significant persistence, and more than 95 have experienced one positive symptom, including a delusion. Delusion. The government's out to get you. That's a delusion. America has been waging war against its common people since, you know, maybe a century, maybe at least a century. You know, they're making us grow corn and all these things instead of, like, food that could actually be healthy for the soil. We're, like, actively desertifying our continent and our world while, you know, it's like delusional. They're controlling what you think by literally pruning social media, which is supposed to be a public square, so that you are not allowed to have access to information in the way that the internet was invented to be democratic. You know, delusional. These delusional things, like thought deletion and stuff like that. And that's like, J-Reg dropped a video recently. Shout out J-Reg, of course, always. Where's the war? That's an amazing video. Amazing video. Check that out. Additionally, about half have experienced some negative symptomology from the early stages, which is striking considering that not all FEP patients, including those with effective and non-effective psychosis, progress to a diagnosis of schizophrenia. To our knowledge, this is the first study that explores differential clinical profiles of the earliest symptoms of psychosis in FEP patients based on patterns of previous substance use. One of the most important findings of the study is that patients with FEP and a history of tobacco smoking had an increased prevalence of sleep disturbances as a general prodromal symptom, reaching 43% in comparison with rates of less than 20% in non-smoking patients. Many studies have associated sleep problems with an increased risk of psychotic experiences in clinical and non-clinical populations. These findings lead us to speculate whether sleep disturbances may have played an important role in previous findings related to tobacco and to increased risk of developing psychosis. And I would say sleep deprivation is so under-discussed in these things. Because it's like, it's like, oh my god, all homeless people are schizophrenic. It's like, you think they sleep well? You think that they're getting deep REM cycles? You think they're getting their 8 hours a day? Really? Interesting. Maybe sleep disturbances. Maybe, having a loving father. Maybe, having a house that you can be in. Maybe these things might address psychotic symptoms. Oh, no. They smoke pot. However, compared with patients who use cannabis concomitantly, FEP patients who used tobacco only showed less frequent positive symptoms such as hallucination, disorganized thinking, and less frequent general prodromes such as perceptual abnormalities or ideas of reference. Furthermore, some of the studies conducted to date have not found a significant relationship with clinical patterns of psychotic symptoms in tobacco smoking. This data contrasts with the finding of other authors who have reported that the effect of tobacco on the onset of psychosis is causally related and is independent of cannabis. So, let me tell you, again, anecdotal evidence. Me, teenager, complete evolution, no interest in life. My anorexia stems from a complete disinterest in staying alive, where it's like I don't want to eat the food because I don't want to stay here. So it's like I have to literally force feed myself, and it's like it was that relationship that then allowed me to develop like a relationship with life. But it was like these problems were long before the drug use, long before even being introduced to daily cannabis use or introduced to my own consumption. Yes, my mother did feed me pills at 3, but whatever the fuck. And my point to say that is that this isn't the chicken and the egg. This is something that I've been attracted to because it helps with my negative symptoms. And the reason why I get... So what are we talking about? So yeah, general promos. Again, I would say that it's because of my evolution that I smoke weed. Because it's like I literally never was able to get out of bed, but then I started smoking weed in bed, and that's what got me out. Because it was like, you smoke a spliff or you smoke a joint in bed, and you're like, I want to do something. I actually do want to do something. And that's what got me out. And that's what got those symptoms to go away. But the reason why I have those symptoms more than the average person is because I struggle with those symptoms, with or without cannabis. Sleep deprivation, though, is the thing that's what makes me hallucinate. Stay up till you hallucinate. That's what happens. You stay up for 2-3 days, you're gonna see shit. Another thing for me is too much stress. I think that the American lifestyle drives people fucking crazy. Where it's like if you put all this abstract, taxes and bills and utilities and donating to political campaigns and paying for your kid's school and paying off your own school debt and buying food and cooking food and you got a car and you got insurance and you gotta drive that and you gotta do dental and then you gotta fucking worry about it's like what about your feet? That's a different kind of fucking doctor. You gotta go to that doctor and you gotta go to your gut doctor and you gotta go to your skin doctor and you gotta go to your allergy doctor and there's that's not made for human life. That's gonna drive anybody fucking crazy. I don't think it's the weed, really. I just don't think it's the weed. I just don't. Sorry. I think that everybody is more prone to being fucking crazy because we're killing them, because we have destroyed the family unit, we have destroyed churches, we've destroyed just cultural significance. We have no attachment to poetry or art because everything we want to do is just new. Nobody has any respect for anybody the fuck else. It's like, I'm a communist, but you don't like Marx or Stalin. You don't like anybody, you have no interest in the historical relevance of these things. You're just like, I want a special identity, so I'm going to reinvent the fucking wheel. And it's just like, no, man. I don't fucking know. Whatever. So nevertheless, it should be mentioned that when we repeated our analysis excluding patients who had used cocaine, differences in the prevalence of perceptual abnormalities and hallucinations disappeared, but psychopathology were maintained and were more prevalent in patients using both substances. So when you exclude cocaine, what the fuck, dude? That means that the cannabis use is not correlated to the hallucinations. But I wouldn't even say the cocaine use is. Again, people who hallucinate are using tobacco, cannabis, and cocaine. which said like the people who are mentally struggling are going to be more likely to try to do things to help with that struggle. And that's why it's like, I mean, again, I'm not a medical professional. I don't fucking know. But to me, reading the literature, this is the intuitive thing that I'm picking up. And this is why I am an advocate. This is why I do this show, is because I want to be able to say the things that scientists can't really write, because that's illegal for them to write. But I think this is what we're seeing. I'm thinking this. I think that we can just keep checking, keep like reading through stuff and doing our due diligence. And I think that that's what we're, and again, this is like slightly critical of cannabis, but I still think it's a positive piece of research overall. So yeah. Tobacco users, lower symptoms. In summary, sleep disturbances, not psychotic, people who smoked tobacco and cannabis use, 75% of cigarette smokers had used cannabis. We promote, and this is the thing that's frustrating, we propose smoking cessation not only in patients with established mental illness, but from the early stages. Smokers have few negative symptoms, i.e. social withdrawal. Well, it's inherently a social activity. That makes sense. Psychotics are more likely to use all substances. Well, bipolar people as well. Bipolar people as well. Seems we're misguided with mental illness, trying to ask why instead of how we can help. Car exhaust don't. And that my point with this is saying, like, again, like, I'm going to keep hitting that fucking point with air pollution. It's one of the leading causes of death in Mexico City. And like, you're like, oh my God, these people are smoking weed. Meanwhile, you drive a fucking Hummer. Meanwhile, you drive a fucking gas car, and you don't support public transit, and you don't support the de-densification of urban areas while re-urbanizing areas that are underutilized. You know, because it's like, if New York City from 1910 to 2020 is going to go from 1 million to 10 million people, that means that your area, your landmass, needs to go from that 1 to 10. So you need to grow that amount in the same density ratio to keep that urban environment healthy. You might even need to add breaks in within it between, like some farmland. You know, and that's how you actually responsibly do these things. But instead, you're just shipping in and out, having all these fucking cargo boats, having all these trucks, having all these cars, having all these mopeds, having all these planes, and you're just dumping car exhaust and air pollution and fuel into the lungs of children. You're just force feeding that right the fuck in there and making them schizophrenic and then blaming them 12 years later when they smoke pot. And you're like, oh, it's probably that pot you smoked. It's not this room. I can't deal with my neighbor. I can't walk around my neighborhood. I can't have friends. I can't be a social agent. I have to be in my box because it's the only way I feel comfortable. Yeah, it's your fucking fault. 60% of the psychotic experiences correlated to youth living in urban areas can be explained by air pollution. So stop fucking with me. Stop fucking with me. But anyways, so it's like, I'm not trying to be a dick, but these people demanding people change their consumption habits. Why not ask them to go to church? Why not ask them to go for a walk? Why not become part of the community? So here we have we have a mouse model, 212. No. Here we have rate of medical overuse, and it's people who are, you know, on opiates and all this other shit. And it's like, well, people smoke weed and take these opiate mental health, like migraine medications, tend to, you know, overuse their medicine. And it's like, oh my fucking God, why don't we try to, why don't we get them to walk? Why don't we bring them to church? Why don't we make them volunteer? Why don't we teach them how to play the drums? Why don't we do anything that could help their lifestyle? Why is it immediately like, that thing that you like? Fuck that. Don't do that. Don't do that. No. You know, it's never positive. It's always negative. Because I consider pills also negative because they're changing your brain. They're taking something out of it. You know, so it's like they're always trying to do a negative thing. You stop doing that. It's never, why don't you start doing this? So fuck you. And like, sure, they're misusing the pills that you feed them, but also, like, you have a mouse model here which shows that THC was able to have pro-social effects, which is like, you know, so THC was making mice pro-social. And what excites me so much about cannabis is that, you know, it's like my family's dead, dude. Like, my family is either alcoholics, opiates, or literally dead from, like, benzo withdrawal, from Xanax withdrawal. And yet, meanwhile, you got like these people who are, you know, it's a water-soluble nanoparticle CBD-dominant anti-inflammatory inhaler, and it's 12 participants administered 2 sprays, right? And then you have it achieved plasma concentrations that were largely comparable. So this is this is trying to get, like, you know, it's trying to treat people for fuck, I forgot. Sorry, my bad. But yeah, so the point, it's unhealthy studies, but the point is to get plasma concentrations that were in comparison with these formulations, and there were no reports of adverse effects associated with unfavorable inflammatory sequelae. So it's well tolerated, is the point. Let me just check to make sure that that's all I can get out of there. I mean, again, yeah, so it's like, it's a market alternative, and it's safe, and it's well tolerated, you know? Meanwhile, it's like, you know, it's like my dad's therapist was giving him speed to wake up in the morning and Ambien to go to bed at night, and it's like, I didn't even fucking know that, dude. You know, I barely got to see my fucking father, just because he was always fucking out to lunch. But again, this is a cocaine use disorder, and again, placebo versus CBD. CBD found to be helpful with reducing inflammation in cannabis and in cocaine use disorder. So, like, again, like, we can talk about all these bad things, and we can have all these weird frameworks, but again, like, I would say, like, with psychosis and things like this, like, people aren't reading. People don't love their parents. People don't love their neighbor. People don't go to any sort of community events. People just spend money and get fucked. And you're telling me that it's like, wow, what is this rise in the mental health crisis? And it's like, there's no connectivity, my man. What the fuck are you surprised for? You know? Like, it's just, I don't know, it just seems silly to me. It seems fucking silly. Anyways, that's the science. Please check it out on Twitter. If you appreciate the show, please support us on High Lit. Always here. Appreciate any sort of support. TikTok right there. Anyways, Logo, great fucking dude. Love him. But this recent tweets, the recent tweet links, all that, fire. Amazing. Killing that shit. Hitting the nail on the goddamn head. You know, like, Amazon should be a state-owned enterprise. Twitter should be a state-owned enterprise. Many of these things should simply be state-owned enterprises, considering that they were developed off the internet, which should also be a state-owned enterprise. Amazon is not a genius move. Like, people are like, well, Bezos was the first one to do it. He was also the first one with a $250,000 like fucking angel donation from his parents to keep that company afloat. And most people do not have $250K, so shut your dumb fucking ass. I'm sick of this. I'm sick of the hereditary aristocracy saying that it's a meritocracy when it's like, no, you're just sucking your dad's dick. So, like, Amazon does not deserve to be a monopoly. It does not deserve to capitalize on a innovation in shipping that they did not do anything to develop. That doesn't make sense. That is not marketing. That is not capitalism. That is a person simply capitalizing on the development of technology and making... It's as if they are claiming the invention of it. You know? So, no. Read this link. Just check in. He's been doing great work recently, so I just wanted to give him a shout out. Loved that tweet. Also, shout out to this sustainable infrastructure, talking about canals. I got a really soft spot for canals. Also, Wrath of Known, amazing fucking Twitter. We've got like 16 minutes to kill. Yeah, but so that's the Wednesday show basically. I'm gonna be rolling. We're probably gonna read some more from Mother. But I just wanted to go through all that stuff because I thought it was interesting. Of course, you know that's the show. But, again, the psychotic thing just kind of gets on my nerves because it's like, I don't think that they understand what the actual root of these things are. Where it's like, so if you read Artie Lang, who, again, you know, is like, what? Artie Lang is how fucking old, you know, at this point? He's like 60s, maybe? 1960s psychologist. And he was talking about, like, the root of schizophrenia. And Carl Jung said that when a schizophrenic is understood, he ceases to be schizophrenic, you know? And I think that that is a very real statement. And that's where, when Artie Lang was going through, you know, his case studies and, like, all this other stuff, which also, if you get The Divided Self and you read those case studies, they're fucking incredible. But point being that we're getting back to case studies, etc., etc. Oh yeah. So it's like when a psychotic or a schizophrenic is speaking in this language that isn't like quite understandable. It's like, I'm under glass, and then they're just shouting that it's like I'm under glass, and it's like, wow, and like it was like this one thing that was from the book. Where he's talking about like this guy who brought a schizophrenic on stage to show his psychosis, and it was like doing that, where like the kid just kept saying stuff like that, and it was like obviously coded language. It's like it doesn't take a genius to see that boy he doesn't know how to describe his discomfort, so he's using analogy and he's using metaphor to try to communicate with the humans around him. But they're simply analyzing the brain, and they're analyzing it from too scientific a method that they're not able to get to the existential reality of the schizophrenic. And that's where R.D. Laing's work was so profound. And I think that it is truly, maybe even revolutionary, or whatever the fuck you want to call it. But that's where I think it's crucially important. Because I think that that's truly the stem, is that break in... It's that break in the ability to communicate with the outside world. So I think that isolation is going to be the much higher risk factor. Isolation, substance abuse generally, anything that is asocial or unsocial behavior. Things like that are going to be a heavily predictor of, I think, negative symptomology and negative outcomes of psychosis and things such like that. It's going to be a little bit of a lull, I'm going to be honest. Yeah, I understand. We just went through a bunch. Obviously going to be back Friday. Probably shooting more TikToks tomorrow. That should be interesting. I'm going to start doing interviews soon. And yeah, just trying to, like, look alive. Keep up. I think we read a lot of this recently. And also, so like another thing about Mother, I think I've already discussed this too, is that Mother is about the mother of a socialist revolutionary or a communist, whatever. But it's that pre-revolutionary idea, but it's like, it's like their work. And the idea with the mother is that the mother is an Orthodox Christian. She's Russian Orthodox. And then there's, her children, and their socialism is widely understood, or communism is widely understood, the USSR is widely understood to be atheist. And the reason why I bring this up is because this conversation is understood as part of it. And while they don't really use Christ, and they don't really use the Christian hermeneutics, the mother does. And she says that our children are living and doing the work of God. And they're not even asking God to recognize them. They're not even asking for the credit. And Dostoevsky also repeated something similar to it, where the atheist does good for goodness itself, while the Christian, or maybe the faux Christian, does it for the sake of, credit, honor, and pleasing God. They do it for reward. But the atheist does it simply because they think it's the right thing to do. And that's where it's like, the mother is like, yeah, they are letting themselves get cut down. They're letting themselves be arrested. They're like, really suffering for the sake of us, the common people. And even though like their ideas are new and unfamiliar and seem alien and improper, at the same time, like you can see them, trying to like, they're literally living their lives in service to the greater good, which is like, what could be more Christian? And I think that is a lost conversation in the modern era, because I think that there is, whether you're looking at Gorky, whether you're looking at Belly, whether you're looking at Turgenev, I think that there is this softness for the parent. Father and Sons, Mother, Petersburg. All of these are about familial life, and it's about the war of ideas within the household. And I think that is, like, they do it with a touch of vulnerability and intimacy and respect. The best of Russian literature has access to both worldviews, and they understand both the Tsarist and the communist. And I think that conversation and that debate is crucially informative to our modern situation, and I think it's something that we should consider. Because I think that the kingdom of God on earth criticism is the best criticism of communism. And I think that if you're not able to address it, then, you know, you're not really doing anything. Because you have to live with the reality of how things are. And if you really want to be a commie, you do have to debate that China is doing better. But we're moving on from that topic. Anyways, from the historical book, yes. But also, like, when you look at, Tolstoy. Tolstoy, it was a huge inspiration on MLK and civil rights and things like that. And he was a Christian anarchist. So what he believed in was communes. He believed in people forgoing the government and just simply devoting each other to love. Or devoting to loving each other. Which is funny because then he ended up going back on Dostoevsky and being like, wow, I actually really appreciated this guy. And he's much better than I originally gave him credit for. And so I think that also points to later in his life when he grew more sympathetic to the ideas of the common people and their holiness, that he started to understand Dostoevsky's point, which in a lot of his literature, I think it does speak to the importance of humans as humans. There will come a time, I know, when people will delight in one another, when each will be a star to the other, and when each will listen to his fellow as to music. But the thing about it, too, is that none of these come from hate. Because when they're talking about the policemen, and they're talking about the state, they're saying that we're doing this for their sake, too. These people are also our people. Everybody is our people. We're doing this for all humanity. And they do not matter to the systems and the control. So it's like, while they might cut us down, if they were to be cut down, they would get nothing for it. So do not hate them, but pity them as well. Pity all humans for living under the conditions that we do, and devote your life to improving it. And I don't think that there is something inherently wrong with that feeling. The government critique is a separate issue. But that's not a governmental feeling. That's a declaration. That's a declaration of the meaning of life. And who says that the meaning of life isn't to live in service to other people? You're not supposed to be a slave, but you are supposed to, like, do you really want to cook the best meal ever for you? Or do you want to share it? Do you really want to become the most successful person in the world for you? Or do you want to share it? And I think that these are just conversations that we should, be comfortable with. And also inherently, working class people are not pro-revolutionary. So, that is the thing is too. It's like, you're gonna be betrayed on all sides. If you love man and you dedicate your life trying to improve the quality of life on earth, you'll be betrayed by all sides. That is how that works. But I think it's important to dream, and I think it's important to keep the dreams alive. And that's why I think people are so attracted to it. And why people are so stubbornly insistent on this ideology is because they want to dedicate themselves to goodness. But without the church, and because it's like the issue with the church is the issue with communism, where it's like, well, there's bad actors. And it's like, well, yes, there's bad actors everywhere. So it's like, but you do kind of need an idea. Because it's like, if you're a genius, you don't. Because you can just process the world for yourself and make your ideas for yourself. But if you're in any ways an average person, like most of us, you need help with frameworks. You need help with getting ideas together and making sense of the world. So that's where I really recommend working within a community. Because then it's like you start to really, it gives you more meaning and focus than you just acting as like, I'm going to call myself this edgy term because then I have the ability to criticize everything. It's like, and this is why I talk about policies, because policy is not a criticism. Policy is an ask. Do not criticize your government, ask your government. Where it's like, oh my God, you shouldn't be doing this. Oh my God, you shouldn't be doing this. It's like, could you do this? Like one of those things. It's like, one of those things I think would be important is that it's like, we're releasing prisoners. We're willing to do that. We're willing to engage in that, especially during the COVID thing. It's like, well, why don't we release all non-violent offenders? Why don't we release everybody who's not guilty of violently attack? Why don't we release everybody who's guilty of not paying the IRS? Why don't we release everybody who sold drugs? Why don't we release everybody who, all that shit? Like, why don't we just blanket, just let them go. I don't care. I don't even care if you sold, like, I don't care if you're selling drugs and it's, like, for, like, college money, you know? But it's like, yeah, I mean, there's certain things where it's like, okay, you're poisoning a fucking city. But it's like, if you're selling, like, a pound of weed, I don't give a fuck about that. You know? You know, like, if you ask for that, like, you know? I feel like that's much more powerful than if you're just always bitching. So, that's where it's like, I think it's important to find something to agree on, and then to start asking your local or even higher level politicians, like, why not? Why not mental health reform? What's going on? Why not public transit? Why are our cities broken? Where is the money going? You know, even like, I think it'd be interesting even if you just, if everybody asked their local government to do an audit, like, on their pay. You know, where's the money going? You know, because I feel like if we started asking that as a public, they'd start getting their shit together more. Nobody gives a fuck about what you say. You can write as many books as you want. You can talk about as many things as you want. But until you start going to the secret little mouse people, you know, like the fucking representative from Idaho, you know, until you just start putting pressure on them, they're not going to be who you want them to be. You know, so that's where it's like, I think that you need to start doing ask. I want to ask for canals, so relevant. Let's just look at a little bit at this. So Kyoto, the imperial capital of Japan, spring 1608. That's a short story. Do we have pictures? That's so pretty. I will read the rest of this later, and I'll see if I can get screenshots and just break it down. Wow. Yeah, this is what I mean. Like, look at it. This is versus a road. This is a quieter. You can't really just, like, be going 80 miles in a fucking boat. You know? I heard somebody, like, doing that in the back fucking street the other day, and it's like, dude, this is hardly even fucking Jesus. Just stay safe. So yeah, they like, and a lot of people closed off their canals. But the thing about a canal is that you can, first off, you got houses on it. Second off, shipping, you don't need gasoline. You know, you can just simply move things, and that's where it's like, I do think that these conversations are very crucial, is because then it allows you to actually start designing things that maybe aren't literally a trap to make kids crazy. Maybe we can do that. Anyways. Awake but still in bed. I have permission to use their music. I will play out. We're going to play out on them. This has been Highlight with Carlisle Fletcher. Thank you so much for watching the show. Please like, comment, and subscribe. This is our Patreon, Highlit. Our TikTok is Highlit O, so it's Highlit 0. And that's what's going on. Anyways, happy Wednesday. Thank you so much for giving us your time. And just stay doing whatever the fuck you want to do.
'cause I'm not sure that they'll know what I mean. I wanna be here with your family. Instead, I'm packing up my things to leave. My heart is running on the cold air. They say that I spend too much time with you, but I don't listen. Feel like I'm in high school again. It's reflected in the concepts they share. I might be there, but I don't see where. I'm far away mentally, 'cause I don't think they wanna hear from me. I wanna be part of my family. Instead, I'm sitting here silently. I'm afraid to say anything, 'cause I don't know if they care what I think. I wanna be loved by somebody. Instead, I push them all away from me. 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 I tried to play God, tried to build a whole new me, but unlike God, I had to keep on living. You are strong in a hidden way. True self-love. I ran away from it. Strange how you wish that you were dealt my hand, but you could love your children, and that's something I'll never understand. Live your life. It's not too late for you. I'll say
has been Awake But Still in Bed from San Jose, California. Great band. Love them. Real fun. Check them out. Support them. Please do all that. Anyways, other content that we featured came from Logo, Wrath of Known. Check them out too. Good fucking people. This is the Patreon. This is my Twitter. That's about it. I'll see y'all Friday. Have a great rest of your day. Stay fucking reading and all that. Do all that. Okay. Thank you. Like the video or something. I don't know.